This is Mr. Wade for Writer's Craft, and we're just looking at dialogue for film right now. I'm going to give you a very quick tutorial on my thoughts about writing good dialogue, and hopefully you guys can use these ideas when you're writing your own dialogue for your pilot. So dialogue is important for scenes. You won't find too many scenes where the whole thing is dialogue. There are a lot, but and filmmaking is much more than writing dialogue, but it's important to know how to write conversations. There's way more conversations in drama and film than there are in real life. I think that goes without saying, but and the reason why, I guess, is that because films and stories are made for people, they're going to have what people are interested in, and people are interested in other people. They're interested, and they see conversation as a really important meeting place and kind of a place that where reality is kind of created. Dialogue is like metaphysically very important. So it happens a lot in stories, and so here are my suggestions for writing. Oh, sorry, I forgot. So what's the purpose of writing conversation in film? Well, the purpose for that is the purpose for any other thing in dramatic writing, which is to reveal character and advance the plot. If something is not doing either of those things, then you should probably cut it out. So revealing character is when your writing tells us about the person, or it tells us about like everything about the person, what they're like. Also, the mood of the place where the person comes from. Like they might have an accent, they might have a certain turn of phrase that kind of indicates where they're from, or maybe a little bit about their background, or maybe even also about the kind of day they're having. Dialogue can also tell us about the story itself, what's happened and what's been happening and what will happen. So that's kind of goes without saying, I guess. You don't want to put anything in your drama that doesn't either reveal character or advance the plot. So here are my suggestions for writing good dialogue. It should be realistic. The voices should be distinct. There should be levels of meaning, and it should be efficient. And then I have a few things to say about games. So first of all, dialogue does not have to be perfect. It doesn't have to have perfect grammar or sentence structure. When you're writing dialogue, you're definitely not writing a high school essay. So it's a little bit strange because all of our writing training has been to write formal language. And when you're doing conversation, you have to throw all that out. You have to do something new. And this is hard because even though we're experts at having conversations, we're amateurs at writing them down. And this, I think, is because of the way the human mind works. We're always filtering out the ways in which we speak. When we listen to other people, we filter out how they're communicating. We think that they're just talking directly to us, but in fact, they're using all these different levels of communication, and we filter that out. But when we write dialogue, we have to put all that back in. We have to put in turns of phrase. We have to put in, anything that kind of indicates all the nonverbal communication. So listen carefully to people and how they say things. I think that's a really good practice. Like listen carefully to yourself, to your friends, to your family. Every conversation you have, take advantage of the opportunity to really listen how people talk. And then another suggestion I have is that when you are done writing dialogue, read it out loud. Have someone else read it out loud with you and see if it flows naturally. Okay, so I'm going to look at 3 examples of a scene, the same conversation, written in 3 different ways. Each time I wrote it, I made it more realistic. So here's the first time. It's really unrealistic. And I just want to read it to you to show you, first of all, how terrible it is, but also that this is actually more common than you think. It's actually fairly common for students to write dialogue like this if they've never written it before. So anyway, here it is. Interior shot of Peter's office. It's at night. Peter is on his own. Marie enters. Marie, says Peter, what are you doing here? I wasn't expecting to see you. I'm really surprised. Marie says, I've just had a telephone call from Stella. She rang from the tennis club to tell me that you have been seen kissing that tall, dark girl from the 5th floor, Stephanie. I feel deeply betrayed. I feel shattered and alone. How could you do this to me? Peter said, I meant to tell you, but I was feeling a mixture of guilt and regret that our marriage was over. Now I feel good that at least it has come out into the open. How can you be so cold? I'm not cold. You are cold. I'm not cold. I'm feeling so confused. Part of me still wants our marriage to work. Another part of me feels that I want to spend the rest of my life with Stephanie. When are you going to tell the children? I don't know. Why are you asking me all these questions? I didn't choose for this to happen. I'm so upset and confused. I am so shattered that I am going to take the children and go and stay with Sally for the next few days. All right, I'll ring you. We need to talk. Yes, we do need to talk. Goodbye, Peter. Goodbye, Marie. Marie exits. Peter is left alone. Peter voiceover. This is terrible. How am I ever going to tell the children? Okay, so that's the first version, and I want to share with you the next version, which is a little bit more realistic. Here's Peter in his office in the daytime. He's on his phone. Yes. Marie throws open the door. Marie, says Peter to the phone. I'll call you back. Marie, oh, don't hang up on my account. I suppose that was her, was it? Little Miss Stephanie from the 5th floor? I don't know what you mean. Stella, Peter, she told me. She rang me up and told me that you were having an affair. Peter gets up, walks about distractedly. Well, are you going to tell me it's not true? Marie, I love you and the children. Ha! I do. I'm confused. Part of me wants the marriage to work. Another part wants to be with Stephanie for the rest of my life. You creep. Don't call me that. Aren't you a creep? No, I'm not a creep. I'm a human being with needs and feelings. Something you seem to forget, Marie. Marie slaps him around the face. I didn't deserve that, Marie. When are you going to tell the children? Or should that be, are you going to tell the children? I'll tell them. I just need a little time. I'm taking them to me with Sally's. With me to Sally's. We'll stay there. You'll hear from my lawyers in the morning. Marie, don't touch me. But Marie, you can't. Can't what, Peter? She stares at him for a moment and then exits. He sinks, shattered, into his chair. Music plays as he catches sight of the photo on his desk of his kids and Marie. He pours himself a drink. He throws the glass to the ground, smashing it. All right, so that's the second version. And hopefully you can pick up how more realistic it is in the first version. And this is the third version. Interior shot of Peter's office in the day. Peter's on the phone. He's looking through the papers as he speaks. He's calm, in control. Peter, no, I need delivery by the 5th or not at all. He sees Marie approaching. I'm sorry, what? I'll leave it with you. Bye. He hangs up, gears himself to look normal. Marie enters. Peter, hi. She just stares at him. Peter gets up and closes the door. Marie realizes why and then gives a contemptuous snort. Peter comes back behind his desk. There was a tense pause. Marie, I've just been driving around. Stella rang this morning. Pause. I was going to tell you. Marie sighs. The hell you were. Pause. I'm taking the children to Sally's. Oh, don't do that. The phone has started to ring. Marie, cutting in. When are you going to tell them? Are you going to tell them? Peter, it's not as simple as that. I think it's bloody simple. Oh, shit. Snatching up the phone. Masters. He's watching her every movement, but it's his boss. Oh, Mr. Carter, yes. Marie waits a moment and then gets up to go. Look, I'm extremely sorry, sir. Can I call you back? The boss is clearly not pleased. Thank you, sir. He hangs up and grabs at Marie as she gets to the door. Marie, go away. No, we need to talk. Go away, please. Okay, so that's the end of those examples. And I think what we need to realize is that dialogue is hard to write in a realistic way, but it has to be realistic. It has to sound like the way people actually talk. And I think when you look at those examples, you can see that there are things that people are doing, that the two characters are doing in the third scene that are not there in the first scene. They're just, you really have to listen not only to what people say, but how they say it. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is voices. And the suggestion is that every character has to have a distinct voice. So first of all, what is voice? When I say voice, I'm not talking about the voice that the actor uses. That's way later than the writing part. The voice I'm talking about is the character's way of speaking. So in a novel, voice is established over time. And in film, usually less time is available. So we have to establish the distinct sound of the character really early on in film. And you have to use distinct sound to distinguish the characters from each other. Otherwise, every character in the story sounds just like the author. And so a lot of students, when they first start writing scripts, they make all the characters sound the same. And it's basically them speaking. It's just the author is speaking through all these people, and it sounds really, really boring. So we need to learn to distinguish the voices of the characters. So how do we do that? There are basically three ways of, I think, there are three elements of a person's voice. One is the vocabulary. So the kind of vocabulary you use is important, but it's a very, it's not the whole part. So the words you use in your speech to communicate directly your ideas, that's what I would call the logos of the speech. Just, if you're trying to explain how to make a sandwich or how a car engine works or how sunsets work, you're going to provide an explanation of that. And that's going to involve, the use of vocabulary and the use of syntax and all of that stuff. But at some point, the communication also involves what I would call turns of phrase. And these could be the use of idioms or expressions, sometimes even oaths or profanity. These turns of phrase are things, they're modes of expression that we fall back on when the pressure mounts. So in an ideal setting, you're just communicating perfectly. When you're relaxed and you don't feel threatened, you're communicating exactly what you want to communicate, and you're doing it, from, the peaceful confines of your own confidence. But usually in a conversation where there's a lot at stake, you're going to resort to more kind of idiomatic expressions because you don't really have time to formulate your ideas. There's, too much pressure on. So, your idioms are going to come out, your expressions, your oaths, sometimes real profanity will come out. And then this brings us to the next level down, what I would just call idiosyncrasies. So these are just almost like sublingual, like there's sounds that you make that don't have any referent. There's nothing that that the sound translate towards. Like if I say car, I'm talking about a vehicle. But if I just say or ah, I'm not talking about anything. I'm just making a sound. But these kinds of things indicate, these kinds of idiosyncrasies are an important part of a person's voice. And, when the pressure is increased, a person will resort more and more to these kind of sublingual sounds. And everybody does it, but they do it in a different way. So vocabulary, turns of phrase, and idiosyncrasies are ways that you can, teach, that there are ways that you can distinguish a character's voice from another character. And one way of doing this is just build the character from the ground up. Really think hard about that, how that character is going to communicate. Another way to do it is just plagiarize. Just plagiarize from other movies, plagiarize from books you've read, plagiarize from shows you've watched. Is there a character that really stands out for you? Are they, maybe they're really well-developed character. You can use that character. You can also plagiarize from real life. You can look around your space and look for interesting people, and then use those people as characters. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is subtext. Subtext is extremely important. It is it's not accurate to use that expression subtext because it implies that it's below. But what I really probably want to say is that anytime there's a really important conversation, there are many levels of meaning. So there's what I would call the explicit or ostensible meaning, and then there's the real meaning. And often characters say they're talking about one specific thing, like, I don't know, how to make a sandwich, but they're also maybe alluding to two or three other things. And they don't necessarily know that they're doing this. And I think subtext really comes into play when there is more at stake in the conversation. So if you're just having a friendly conversation with a total stranger, there's probably no subtext because there's nothing at stake. You're not going to say one thing and then mean something else. But if you're having a conversation with somebody and there's a lot at stake, for example, if somebody's accusing you of something and you want to get out of it, or you want to, you're being defensive and you're also nervous and, you're trying to do a number of things at once, you might communicate on many different levels and you might not even fully know how you're doing it. So very few people say what they mean. In a real conversation, people usually talk in code and often say what they don't mean. So it's actually a challenge for an audience. When you put subtext in characters, into dialogue, you're challenging the audience. So the audiences try to crack the code. They watch how people are inaccurate and untruthful. And out of that comes the truth of who they are. So in film and theater, the best scenes are when no one says what they mean. The audience becomes privy to the inner life of the characters. They hear what the characters don't say rather than what they do. This is very exciting for audiences. It really engages them. So writing on many different levels is a really good way to engage your audience. It's a great way to get them invested in the story. All right. So then, you know what? Going back to subtext, I feel like I should probably show you a clip from. Hold on. Okay. So this is a clip from the film No Country for Old Men. It's the very famous gas station coin toss scene. In this scene, this very menacing character called Anton Chigurh has gone into the gas station. He's bought some gas. He wants to pay for it. And he gets involved in a conversation with a gas station attendant that takes him down a very, very dark path. And this is sort of a textbook case of subtext. And what I want to do is just show you the scene and stop you from time to time as we kind of explore how there are moments in the conversation that lead the conversation to other levels, which were not intended by the garage, by the gas station attendant.
How much? 69 cents. And the gas. You don't get any rain up here. What way would that be? I seen he was from Dallas. What business is it of yours? Where I'm from? Friendo.
So here the attendant asks him a casual question that doesn't mean anything. Chigurh decides to take that question seriously because he's basically on the run and he's very threatened by anyone who asks about where he's from.
I can mean nothing by it. Could mean nothing. Just passing the time. If you don't want to accept that, I don't know what else I can do for you. Will there be something else? I don't know. Will there?
Again, the attendant asks the question, will there be something else? And what that really means is this conversation is over, but Chigurh won't let it end. When the guy says, will there be something else? Chigurh says, will there be something else? So he just throws the question back at him. And this kind of brings the conversation to another level. There's a lot of new meaning implied by this.
Is something wrong? What? With anything? Is that what you're asking me? Is there something wrong with anything?
So this is kind of an interesting turn. Chigurh is now critiquing the way that the guy is asking questions. And he's just straight up, disrespecting him. When somebody engages you in friendly banter, you're expected to take to sort of interpret those kinds of questions, like how are you doing, in a certain way, and Chigurh is interpreting them in a very different way and throwing it back at him.
Will there be anything else? You already asked me that. You don't know what you're talking about, do you, sir? I said, you don't know what you're talking about. What time do you go to bed, sir? You're a bit deaf, aren't you? I said, what time do you go to bed? Somewhere around 9:30. I'd say around 9:30. I could come back then. Why would you be coming back? We'll be closed. Yeah, you said that. Well, I got to close now. You live in that house out back? Yes, I do. You lived here all your life? This is my wife's father's place originally. You married into it? We lived in Temple, Texas for many years. Raised a family there in Temple. We come out here about 4 years ago. You married into it? That's the way you want to put it. I don't have some way to put it. That's the way it is. What's the most you ever lost on a coin toss? Sir, the most you ever lost on a coin toss.
So at this point in the conversation, I think Shiger is coming almost directly to terms with what he really means. No one ever explicitly states it, but it seems to me that one of the meanings of this conversation is very, very menacing. It's very threatening. He's essentially threatening this guy's life, and he's decided that he's going to, determine this question with the toss of a coin. And it's interesting because both people realize what's being talked about at some point. But they don't explicitly say it. It's all very hidden and oblique.
I don't know. I couldn't say. Call it. Call it, yes. For what? Just call it. Well, we need to know what we're calling it for here. You need to call it. I can't call it for you. It wouldn't be fair. I didn't put nothing up. Yes, you did. You've been putting it up your whole life. You just didn't know it. You know what date is on this coin? No. 1958. It's been traveling 22 years to here. And now it's here. And it's either heads or tails. And you have to say, call it. Well, look, I need to know what I stand to win. Everything. How's that? You stand to win everything. Call it. All right. Heads then. Well done. Don't put it in your pocket, sir. Don't put it in your pocket. It's just like a quarter. Where do you want me to put it? Anywhere, not in your pocket. Or it'll get mixed in with the others and become just a coin. Which it is.
Okay, so that's a little example of subtext. I'm going to post the script as well, and you can kind of skim through it. So subtext is when no one says what they mean. The audience becomes privy to the inner life of the characters and hearing what they say rather than what they do. So another thing I want to talk about is efficiency. So dialogue in film is not as it is in the real world. And this is one way in which it can't be realistic. So the characters in the real world, when they have a conversation, sometimes they talk about what they're doing. You're in the kitchen making muffins, and you might have a conversation with somebody in the kitchen about making muffins. But chances are, if you know this person well, you're not just talking about muffins. So film takes us another step further. What they do is typically the characters in a film will almost never refer to what they're actually doing. They'll engage with the um, with the setting, and they'll engage with the other characters physically in a very kind of, this will not enter into the dialogue. So a way of testing this is to close your eyes and listen to a film dialogue. If it's a good script, it should be difficult to follow. So when you listen to a film script, you shouldn't necessarily know what the characters are doing. So the film Waking Life by Richard Linklater is a great example of this. So I've posted a clip, a link to a very short YouTube clip, but you can do this with lots and lots of films. Just choose a scene, close your eyes, listen to the scene, and then if you can, listen to the clip, watch the clip without sound. And what you should notice in a really well designed script or dialogue is that what you see and what you hear are two very different things. There are essentially two scenes in one scene. The dialogue is about one thing and the action is about something else. This is efficiency. The pictures in the film should tell part of the story, but the dialogue tells another very different part of the story. This is efficient. So you really don't want to have characters talking about what they're doing. I think this one of the reasons why The Room by Tommy Wiseau is such a terrible movie is that they do this all the time. They're constantly talking about what they're doing, and this is really frustrating for the audience. So just to keep going with that idea, dialogue should be used to lie to the audience. What we want to do is describe things differently from what the audience sees. And this is another way in which the audience can become more engaged. The contradiction between what they're hearing and what they're seeing forces them to work out what's going on and makes them think that they're watching and listening. You engage them on more than one level. Okay, so that's very important. So we watched the scene from No Country for Old Men. I want to watch a couple more scenes with you guys. Here's a scene from George Clooney and Julia Roberts in Ocean's 11.
You're 30 seconds late. I was about to send out a search.
Tell it, Tess.
What are you doing here?
I'm out.
You're out.
The prison. You remember the day that I went for cigarettes and didn't come back? You must have noticed.
I don't smoke, don't sit.
Now they tell me that I paid my debt to society.
Funny, I never got a check.
Okay, so I'm not sure of all of the levels of meaning going on in the conversation, but one thing I pick up is the very different way that the two characters are talking. The Danny Ocean character, he's making jokes and he's trying to be confident. He's trying to be suave, and his ex-wife Tess is, cutting him down with, these kind of really sharp reminders of his irresponsibility and the kind of things that he's going to have to show if she's willing, she's going to be willing to even consider what he has in mind. So he keeps making these jokes and he keeps making these kind of references to her life choices, and she is not having any of it. So it's a really kind of sharp-witted, banter back and forth. It's actually very entertaining.
You're not wearing your ring.
I sold it. I don't have a husband, or didn't you get the papers?
My last day inside.
I told you I'd write.
Lots of jokes from Tess.
Danny, go now before...
What? Benedict? How you doing? Whiskey. And whiskey.
Okay, so here it's interesting. The only time when the actual setting of the scene or the activities of the characters in the scene is being referred to is at this moment when Danny Ocean orders a whiskey. there we know if we had our eyes closed, we would probably realize that they were in some kind of a bar or a restaurant. But apart from that, they're really not talking about what they're doing. They're not ordering food. They're not talking about their surroundings. They're not making observations about anything. They're talking about stuff that is not happening in the scene. That's efficient.
Tess, you're doing a great job curating the museum. The Vermeer is quite good, simple, vibrant, although his work definitely fell off as he got older.
Remind you of anyone?
I always confuse Monet and Manet. Now, which one married his mistress?
Monet.
Right, and then Manet had syphilis.
They also painted occasionally.
So that's funny. Tess is, again, she's got a much more dry, cutting repartee. She's basically like shooting down all of his, attempts to seem like the man in charge. She's, reminding him, she's bringing him down to earth and reminding him about, the foolish life choices that she, that he's made, that she's moved on, et cetera, et cetera.
I'll make this quick. I came here for you. When I get on with my life, I want you with me.
You're a thief and a liar.
I only lied about being a thief. I don't do that anymore.
Steal.
Lie.
I'm with someone now who doesn't have to make that kind of distinction.
No, he's very clear on both.
You know what your problem is?
I only have one.
You've met too many people like you. I'm with Terry now.
Does he make you laugh?
He doesn't make me cry.
Okay, so that's another great example. Really, really good dialogue. I think we'll see that it satisfies a lot of the conditions for, great dialogue.
Did you know there are more people?
Okay, whoops. I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, the last scene we're going to look at is from The Social Network with Jesse Eisenberg and Rooney Mara. This is, of course, the biopic about Mark Zuckerberg. And in this opening scene, Mark and his girlfriend Claire are at a local bar in Boston, and they get into this really weird conversation. And we probably looked at this in class already, so we probably won't, get through the whole dialogue. But just want to emphasize the presence of distinctive speaking voices, realistic dialogue, subtext, and efficiency. So, are we going to see all those things? I think we will. So let's just take a look.
There are people with genius IQs living in China, and then there are people with any kind living in the United States.
That can't possibly be true.
It is.
Who would account for that?
Well, first, an awful lot of people live in China, but here's my question. How do you distinguish yourself in a population of people who all got 1,600 on their SATs?
I didn't know they take SATs in China.
They don't. I wasn't talking about China anymore. I was talking about me.
You got a 1,600?
Yes, I can sing in an acapella group, but I can't
Does that
sing.
mean you actually got nothing wrong?
Road crew or a $25 PC.
Where you get into a final club?
Or I get into a final club.
From a woman's perspective, sometimes not singing in an acapella group is a good thing.
This is serious.
On the other hand, I do like guys who road crew.
Well, I can't do that.
I was kidding.
Yes, I got nothing wrong with the test.
Have you ever tried?
So what one thing I really noticed about this dialogue is how the two characters jump around from topic to topic, in the middle of the conversation. So normally a conversation is like a tennis match where a ball is being batted back and forth between, two people. And the ball could represent the topic. In this case, we're looking at not one ball, but three balls being batted back and forth. And they have different colors and different sizes. And it's pretty interesting. So what are they talking about? They're talking about essentially him trying to get into a finals club because he has to distinguish himself from all the other super geniuses at Harvard University. But that's not really the only thing they're talking about. And so she, anyway, I've noticed that there's a huge subtext, but there's also a lot of a lot of different ostensible topics floating around, like how to get into a finals club, how, should he row crew, should he sing in an a cappella group, should he, make lots of money, and then they'll be ostensibly talking about Claire after a while, how Claire could benefit from supporting him, and and then the insecurities of both people that will come up in the conversation. But let's just keep watching.
I'm trying right now.
To row crew.
Get into a final club. To row crew. No, are you like, whatever, delusional?
Maybe it's just sometimes you say two things at once. I'm not sure which one I'm supposed to be aiming at.
But you've seen guys who row crew, right?
No.
Okay, well, they're bigger than me. They're world-class athletes. And a second ago, you said you like guys who row crew, so I assumed you had met one.
I guess it just meant I like the idea of it. The way a girl likes cowboys.
Okay.
Should we get something to eat?
Would you like to talk about something else?
No. It's just since the beginning of the conversation about finals club, I think I may have missed a birthday. There are really more people in China with Chinese IQs than the entire
Phoenix is the most diverse.
So interesting in that in 2 lines they've talked about 3 different topics. So Claire says her previous comment, I just want to try to get to it.
There are really more people.
Wait, missed it.
Talk about something else.
No. It's just since the beginning of the conversation about finals club, I think I may have missed a birthday. There are really more people in China with Chinese IQs than the entire
Phoenix is the most diverse.
So she is trying to suggest how to get into the final club. Then he wants to talk about something else. Then she changes the subject to geniuses in China, and then he goes back to the topic of the finals club.
The Fly Club. Roosevelt punched the pork.
Which one?
The Porcellian, the pork, it's the best of the best.
Which Roosevelt?
Theodore.
Is it true that they send a bus around to pick up girls who want to party with the next Fed chairman?
So you can see why it's so important to get in.
Okay, well, which is the easiest to get into?
So this is a threatening question. She didn't even mean it, but he takes it personally because it sounds like she thinks that he's not good enough to get into the hardest club to get into. So this takes the conversation in a completely different direction.
Why would you ask me that?
I was just asking.
None of that. That's the point. My friend Eduardo made $300,000 betting oil futures one summer, and Eduardo will come close to getting in. The ability to make money doesn't impress anybody around here.
So he's using, he feels threatened by her suggestion, and so he starts to try to impress her with the enormous amounts of money and brilliance of his friends.
Nice. You made $300,000 in the summer?
He likes meteorology.
You said it was oil futures.
You can read the weather, you can predict the price of heating oil. I think you asked me that because you think the final club that's easiest to get into is the one where I'll have the best chance.
What?
You asked me which one was the easiest to get into because you think that that's the one where I'll have the best chance.
The one that's the easiest to get into would be the one where anybody has the best
You
chance.
didn't ask me which one was the best one, you asked me which one was the easiest one.
I was honestly just asking, okay? I was just asking to ask. Mark, I'm not speaking in code.
Erica,
You're obsessed with finals clubs. You have finals clubs OCD and you need to see someone about it who will prescribe you some sort of medication. You don't care if the side effects may include blindness.
final clubs. Not finals clubs. And there's a difference between being obsessed and being motivated.
Yes. There is.
Well, you do. That was cryptic, so you do speak in code.
I didn't mean to be cryptic.
I'm just saying I need to do something substantial in order to get the attention of the clubs.
Why?
Because they're exclusive and fun, and they lead to a better life.
Teddy Roosevelt didn't get elected president because he was a member of the Phoenix
He was a member of the Porcellian, and yes, he did.
Well, why don't you just concentrate on being the best you can be?
Did you really just say that?
I was kidding. Although just because something's trite doesn't make it any
I
less
want to try to be straightforward with you.
So I'm going to just stop there because I think, we've seen enough, but it's a great example of a good conversation between these 2 characters. And so I have no notes for this particular slide, but I think that it's useful to be able to ask this question, or the 4 questions for any dialogue that you may be writing or looking at. Is it realistic? Are the voices distinct? Are there many different levels of meaning? Is the dialogue efficient? Like with any other writing, once you get good at it, you just write. You don't have to worry about these questions. But I think that if you can look at a really good conversation that's doing its job, it's probably answering yes to all these those 4 questions. Okay, and then my last little thought, and it really is a little thought, is about game theory. So, um, game theory is the idea that you can actually model conflict, or you can apply mathematical conflicts models to conflict and cooperation between intelligent decision makers. So, game theory is one idea or one set of ideas to try to explain the ways in which people relate to each other. It's a huge topic, but I think it might be interesting if you were trying to write a conversation between people to really understand, to try to explore maybe the rules that these people think that they're playing, or the rules of the games that they think they're playing. One of the problems with miscommunication, why some people don't get each other, is that they don't understand the games that the other person is playing. So in the previous dialogue that we watched between Mark Zuckerberg and his girlfriend Claire, it's like they're playing several different games, or that they don't really understand the rules of each other's games, and the conversation falls apart. So there's lots of different kinds of games that people play. Basically, game theory is essentially the games that people play with each other. Okay, so that's it. Just to reiterate, we're talking about realism, distinct voices, levels of meaning, and efficiency. These are the things that I think that you could probably work towards when you're writing dialogue. I have a thought for your first assignment, or your next assignment, which is to build a dialogue around a couple of characters from your pilot. By now you've created a world, you've created some characters, you've thought about some characters. I'd like you to think about a situation in which two of your characters will have a really meaningful, intense conversation. And this conversation, I'd like you to model after a dialogue that you've already heard before, something that you really, really like. Choose that dialogue, could be your favorite dialogue from a novel, or the stage, or a film. I'd like you to use that dialogue for your dialogue between your two characters. And then, all right, so that's it. I'm going to try to post the assignment tomorrow. And yeah, thanks for listening.